decided to sign up for this course because I wasn't in a very good place. I was working, but I was off sick with bad back. There was issues at work. I think I was getting involved in conflict that I didn't need to be involved in. I was bringing things home. I was angry with everybody at home. At that point, I thought I needed a new job, but since that's changed. And mentally, I just wasn't in a very good place. And I'd been getting Melanie's weekly motivational messages, and I finally plucked up the courage. But I must say, I was sceptical whether anything could work. How would it change me? I didn't know. And I think when I did the pre-course questionnaire, I was so negative. Everything I was putting was negative, really, since I'm looking back, reflecting on it. So the first thing I'll say is week one. I was a bit shocked because you did the optimal performance zone of optimal performance, and I'd left my previous job 2 years ago, and I'd made up all sorts of reasons why I left, and I thought it was I wasn't being recognised, I wasn't being this, and I sidestepped into a similar role. And I actually realised just after that first week, I wasn't motivated, I wasn't energised, and I was just not in a good place. I like a challenge, but I don't want to be overstretched. But that first week, it was just like, again, and I thought, this is weird. You can't get a light bulb moment in your first week, but realising where I was and then thinking back to when I was happy and I was relatively in a new role and I was being challenged. And I thought, so that sort of little bit started to click. And then I think as the weeks have gone on, I've made some notes actually. Each week brought me a different thing. So I'd applied for a job, finally got over that hurdle. With Melanie's help, I've never gone to an interview where I've been actually calm. I've always been everything. The inner critic has been nagging at me constantly. And I've been negative, they won't want me, they won't like me, etc. And I think with Melanie's coaching, just a session that I did with her, just visualising, using some of the techniques, squashing that inner fear, you engaging that adult wise self and just taking a breath. And before I went for the interview, I went out for a walk. I bought myself a cake because it didn't matter whatever the outcome of that interview was. I was going to celebrate, and it was just unbelievable because the interview didn't go as expected. It wasn't what I expected. They didn't ask the questions. It was uncomfortable. But for the first time, I came off that interview and I thought, well done. I've done really well there, and I was really proud of myself, the way I stayed calm and the way I dealt with the situation. And I didn't dwell on it, even though I didn't feel I'd got the role. I didn't dwell on it at all. And then when I didn't get the job, I was so proud of myself that I gave feedback in a positive way to them. And it wasn't about did they want me? I didn't want them. And I'd realised that in myself. And so that was one of the things. But each week, even the personality, emotional intelligence, I realised that there was no self-awareness and looking after myself. I've been looking after everybody else, but not giving myself time. And every week I thought that I can't learn anything new about myself, but I did. And I've taken on so many of the techniques, and I even go back and look over each week sometimes, and even the Wednesday videos, the TED Talks, I love those. Just the nature one just gives you a moment of calmness. So for me, I've learned so much about myself. I've learned about other people. I think I spoke to Melanie about my mum. I had difficulties, but even my conversations with her now, I just take a deep breath, engage my adult self, and don't get into conflict, unnecessary conflict, focus in the moment. And I'm just, as I think I told you, Melanie, a friend said to me that when they saw me, how much calmer and relaxed I was. And I've noticed it at home. we're going on holiday tomorrow. My husband likes to plan constantly. And when I'd done the personality thing, I realised that at work, I'm quite an extrovert, but at home, I'm an introvert. And I stay quiet, and he likes to plan. And I used to get into arguments, unnecessary arguments with him. And now I realise that's just him. He can't help the way he plans. And I use different ways to cope with that and stay calm and let him continue to plan, but then just the way, instead of arguing with him, say, why don't we just have a day where we don't plan today? And let's just see what brings us today. And I've spoken to him about some of the weeks and gone through things with him. And I'm just such a calmer person at home. And my daughter's she's doing a dissertation at the minute. Normally the house would be in uproar, but I think because I'm calmer, happier in myself, everybody else around me is. And I've realised with a bit of self-care, I was panicking about work. I don't need to work, I'm fortunate, but I was constantly feeling I had to be doing things all the time. I've got to be working. I've got to have things in my diary every day. And my mindset has totally changed. And I think one of the biggest things for me is the inner critic. It hasn't stopped, but it's gone a lot quieter than it was. And I wouldn't have learned, without all these weeks of knowledge, skills, techniques. Some I don't use, but some I do use. And, it's really, really helped me move forward. And just another example, I went into work last week. They asked me to go in. There's a new manager. Well, she asked me to phone and I said, could I come in? I prefer to see you face to face. And I came away feeling so positive because she's asked me to take on just once a month doing something that I was doing. But I said, I'll do it but I'll give you the feedback because people don't listen to what I'm saying because it's implementing change and it needs to come from somebody else. Whereas previously I would have been thinking, I've got to deal with this, and it's that you said about sphere of control, sphere of concern. And there's things happen now that I think, well, they're not in my control, and focus on what I can do. So, yeah, I'm a much calmer and happier person, I think. not 100% of the time, but 95% of the time. So thank you, Melanie, for all you've done for me.